Terry Richardson, welcome to the LYHL Podcast. It's really great to have you here. I'm super excited to actually get to know you a little bit better through this conversation and to learn what I do know kind of from a distance is really intriguing and makes me really excited for this conversation. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Elle. I'm really excited to dive in and learn a few things and impart some things that I know a little bit. So yeah, let's get it.
Cool. All right. We're coming in with that learner mindset, both of us. I love it. Great. So the question I always lead off is, how would you describe your work and vocation?
Yes, I would say that my work is relatively multifaceted. So by day, I'm a physical therapist, and in particular, I'm a wound care physical therapist. So I work a lot with patients that are chronically ill and develop wounds for all sorts of reasons, whether they're lifestyle kind of modifiable reasons, or they could be congenital reasons as well. And essentially, I come alongside those patients and we kind of walk that path together of trying to create a healing environment for their body, but also trying to get them back to things that are meaningful to them, whether it's, going swimming with their grandkids or being able to hike on the weekends or, living out their dream of becoming a stand-up comedian. And so it's really cool to have the experiences that I've been able to have with my patients. And I think one of the things that I have been able to that I've been blessed to be a part of is that journey. And oftentimes, because these patients are chronically ill, we get to spend a lot of time together. And so it's really great to get to know them on a much deeper level than just who they are as a patient, but also like where they fit in their own bubble, and what's really meaningful and what's most important to them. So that's really what I do by day. And then there's a diversity, equity, and inclusion arm that's attached to that as well. So I've initiated and started lots of programs really centered around closing the representation gap for underserved and underrepresented minority communities within the profession of physical therapy. So that's been very fulfilling and very rewarding. I get to talk to students and recruit students, and really, share with them the opportunities and the possibilities of what healthcare as a service could provide, and as a career really could provide them, and in particular, how they could achieve their goals and their dreams through physical therapy and pursuing that path. So that's what I do by day. And then I come home
and
yeah. Then I come home and yeah, I'm an avid gardener, still learning the tricks in the trade of kind of like outdoor gardening, vegetable gardening, and really have taken this year to really take a deeper dive in that aspect of my gardening. But really everything got started for me by essentially dumpster diving for orchids. And so that is what most people in the gardening space know me as. So I also go by the Black Thumb, which is a bit of a play on words, just because growing up, I was never really into plants, wasn't really intentionally around a lot of plants, and kind of always saw myself as a Black Thumb in the traditional sense. And it wasn't until my wife and I, who was my girlfriend at the time, we moved in together and we started to get, housewarming gifts that were plants, mostly succulents. So, plants that can give you some positive.
Right? That's a good place. Yeah,
exactly.
That's a good on board, right? For the hopeful gardener. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, it's plants that give you lots of positive feedback early in the
practice. Yeah, we need that. Yeah, that positivity in life. Yeah.
And along the way, stumbled across a few orchids at our dumpster at the apartment complex that we lived at the time, and just kind of started to take a deeper dive in that aspect of plant care. And 4 years later, it's gotten me to this point, and it's been an incredible journey in the sense that it's really allowed me to kind of slow down and kind of sit with myself and be present with myself. It's given me an opportunity to take care of myself, but also by taking care of something else. So yeah, so it's been a really, really great point of like self-care and an opportunity for me to recharge. So yeah, so that's, so I guess I would say that by day I save limbs by day, I save people's legs and feet by day,
Oh,
and by night
yeah.
I try to save an orchid or two.
Yeah, their limbs too, right? Like yeah. Oh, okay. Well,
Absolutely.
I hope you've got a couple hours blocked off because just right there, we've got like so much to cover.
Let's
And
do it.
I'm super excited just in general about this, but I'm super excited because so I'm a physical therapist too, right? So, and that's how we know each other
Yep.
is our colleagues at USC, name drop there. So that's how we know each other. And so, but we work in very different settings. But you're the first physical therapist that I've had on the podcast, but so this is all about how do you live your healthiest life, and we're going to explore that. And I can't wait to hear just like from your intro, and I just can't wait to hear your thoughts. But I'm so excited because I think physical therapists have so much to offer the world. I think we do give so much to the world, but we do it so like quietly and, one-on-one, and, you're helping people with these wounds. And so I love just like how you painted even the perspective without all kinds of jargon. You just really went in a tangible way of like what you do. So in a hospital setting or acute care, right? You didn't even use the fancy words like acute care for that. So I'm super excited for the listeners too. And this is something I want to be sneaking in is I think physical therapists really contribute so much to the healing of the world. And it attracts people that just kind of want to do it. But I think there's almost like a false humility or something in PT that I think we're depriving some of our capacity to heal the world in a bigger context by just doing our one-on-one things. I can't think of a single movie that like highlighted a physical therapist or a book or, and even physical therapy podcasts, they're like geared towards physical therapists. So I'm super excited to have you here. I feel honored to have you here, and to kind of open this door into part of one of my incentives for doing this is, like bring it. So I'm excited. I keep saying excited, super excited. So hopefully that's coming across.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you talked about so wound care is something that thank you for like loving wound care and being super good at it. That is, and people think of me, sometimes a lot of people don't really probably know who I am because of like how I present versus like my internal world and things. So I kind of come across as like, oh, I can handle everything. And I'm, but I'm actually really, really sensitive. And so wound care, and I couldn't even believe it. Like, so physical therapist brings kind of people that are people, and want to help people. When I sat through like wound care lecture, I like, and we in our how it was structured in my curriculum was like a longer, like intensive. It wasn't just like an hour kind of thing, but it was like a longer, who knows how many hours it was, but it was, I had to get up 4 times and leave. And I'm looking around, I'm like, how can people be like looking at that and just be like taking notes or whatever, like when I see those kind of images. So for me, I get very, I think there's like an empathic problem that I'm like feeling this person's pain and kind of thing. So there was no way that I was going to work in wound care because I just couldn't. And I did have the opportunity, like a little bit, to work in a hospital as a student and experience it a little bit. And I know that I could have like overcome it a little bit, but to be somebody that naturally, well, tell me about your journey, or how did you get into wound care, and whatever you want to share about it, because to me, it's like a world within physical therapy that I really appreciate and celebrate, but I'm like, it couldn't go there?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, number one, like I went into, physical therapy school, and really, wound care wasn't the reason why I got into the profession. It was definitely something that I had no idea even existed until I got to USC as a PT student. Coming into that experience of going to a graduate level program, and a pretty reputable program at that. My mindset was like, I'm ortho, I'm sports. Like at the
Mm-hmm.
time, I was like, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant's PT. Like he's
There we
gonna
go. Yeah.
like we're gonna be besties. We're gonna be all over LA together. And not really understanding that the breadth of what PT really had to offer. And I think this goes to your point earlier, Elle. Like I think a lot of folks think of physical therapy as what has been portrayed in the media, and oftentimes it's someone passively stretching someone, or it's someone passively kind of massaging someone. And so I think in some ways we get a little bit of, not I won't say a bad rap, but we're a little bit misrepresented in the sense, as a profession, in the sense that a lot of times folks come in and say, okay, what are you going to do to fix me? And it's really like, actually, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Right? It's a
Yeah. Yeah.
collective.
Yeah.
It's a partnership. It's a collaboration. It's not me dictating terms to my patients. It's really trying to figure out what they want to get out of the experience, what they're struggling with, what are their barriers, what are their obstacles, what are their challenges, and how can I help them overcome those, right? And how can we do that as efficiently and effectively as possible? And so for me personally, going through physical therapy school, and even being introduced to wound care, to your point, in our lectures, and at USC, it's not as much of an emphasis within our curriculum. So there are little snippets of it throughout your experience on campus. But even after having some of those experiences, um, I still wasn't, from an academic standpoint, I still wasn't thinking, all right, I'm going to be a wound care physical therapist when this is all said and done. It really wasn't until I had some firsthand real life experiences with it on one of my clinical rotations. I had the opportunity to work at California Hospital during the second year of my PT school journey, and it was probably one of the best experiences that I had. I was only there for a couple of weeks, but I really got to see a lot of different types of patients. So I saw traumatic brain injury patients, orthopedic patients, stroke patients, patients that had been unfortunately hit by a car and had really traumatic experiences. But along the way, I got to see a couple of wound care patients. One was a diabetic foot patient who had a pretty gnarly wound, and another patient was a traumatic traumatic patient to the leg that was having some issues with her healing. And really, what I what really interested me, or piqued my interest about that type of work, was number one, that it almost felt to me like, yes, we are physical therapists, but in a lot of respects you have to think almost like a physician to really holistically treat these types of patients and this patient population. And that was really interesting to me. And that was really attractive to me. And, also, I'll be honest with you, those two wounds in particular weren't, they weren't the most aromatic. So it was like, oh, okay, it was, again, positive feedback early in the
Yeah,
process.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Really helped, really wanted, helped me want to take a deeper dive. And so after that 2-week rotation, I was like, you know what, I feel like I need a little bit more information. I want a little bit more experience. I want to take a deeper dive into this area and see if this is something that I could really see myself doing, long term. And after that, ended up doing another short rotation at Keck Medical Center of USC, which is where I work now currently. And just fell in love with that patient population, fell in love with that setting, and really just saw the impact that we could have, but also understanding that there was a need for this type of this type of work within our profession and even within our facility. I think wound care is one of those areas where there are still a lot of very archaic techniques and archaic ways of thinking as far as how to manage wounds. And so I think what I really loved about my time at USC when I was a student was that they were really pushing the envelope. They were really looking and leaning on, the newest research to try and be most effective with their patients. And so that was really attractive to me as well. And so from there, it just kind of snowballed. And I'll be honest, like I was the kid that would pick my scabs. I was also the kid that would watch like surgeries on Discovery Channel. So for me, like some of the gore and some of the things that would turn off most people was kind of intriguing and interesting and exciting to me. And so, so it really allowed me to kind of have the best of both worlds, where I get to really spend that time and almost serve as a gatekeeper in a lot of respects for my patients, but also as an advocate for my patients. But I also, get to think in some respects more holistically, and in a lot of respects, I have to think like a physician, because I have to take in so many other systems and different things that are happening with that patient.
Yeah. So, and to your point about thinking like a physician. So physical therapy is a doctoring profession. So we're doctors, they're doctors, but if we call them a physician, we know that helps us know they're like a medical doctor, right? And so physicians are in large part, thinking of they're scanning to see, like, do you have a tumor? Do you have, how is your blood sugar? What's your blood pressure like? And our body is so good at regulating itself, right? It's just like a miracle, all the stuff that we take for granted, our breathing, just that our brain can tell our body to do certain movements. And so teaching at USC, trying to help the students understand that there is this, I think people that excel in an acute care setting really thrive on, so in that hospital setting, thrive on that. You have to think much more internally, about what's going on and determine, is moving this patient appropriate? It's like you have to know a lot more about medications and their interactions with the body. So there is like such an interesting part, and I never wanted to be a physician, and in large part that was because of the amount of time they spent with patients and like the lifestyle and things. So in a hospital setting, you get to flex some of those maybe kind of more physician mindset. And I also feel like you have to be very good at managing. So you must be very good at like just managing your day, because you have, I need to see these people, right? But in orthopedics, it's specific slots, but there's all kinds of stuff in a hospital setting. They might have a test, right, or a procedure, and there's people in the room, family. So you have to be very good interpersonally and engaging with family members, friends that are visiting, all the different physicians that are coming in to deal with whatever they're in the hospital. Because like you're saying, you might be focusing on the wound, but maybe it was because of like a heart procedure, or maybe because of an accident and there's fractures, or so there's all kinds of things that might be going on to this overall care. So it's like such a special skill set that somebody that works in the setting that you work in has, and super, super interesting. Yeah, thanks for that overview. I love just even learning more about it, and for the listeners too. I'd love to hear about, because I said, no, we got a couple hours going here. So to the second thing, so I keep I'm getting excited and I'm moving around and bumping my desk. So sorry to the people watching on YouTube. For DEI, so diversity, equity, inclusion work that you do. So I've witnessed some of that. And for somebody that's listening, they might not know that you're a person of color, that you're Black. So this is something personal for you, right? It affects everybody's life. Me as a white person, racism affects me negatively. I mean, there's positive ways that I can benefit from a person of privilege, but if it's hurting our society as a whole, then that's like actually hurting me. I'd love to hear how you, just whatever you want to share about more like exploring that work, maybe either how you got into it, how it relates to like the theme of like living a healthier life, or just even more about, so I'm going to leave it wide open to whatever you want to share about it, or exploring a little bit more about some of the programs that you have initiated, because I've seen from afar some of the things that you've done at USC, whether it's the Physical Therapy Multicultural Leadership Alliance. It's a mouthful, which is why we give it an acronym, right? But that's, or like how you're helping undergrad students have like a pathway. Is it Black students specifically, or is it, yeah, okay. So Black students to have a pathway in at USC to reduce some of the barriers that those students have. So I covered a lot there. You don't have to talk about all of it, but I'm very interested in hearing more about your journey.
Yeah, so I would say that really a lot of what I think a lot of the heart that I have today really starts with like my parents. My parents were and continue to be like an incredible example of what it means to be like a servant leader and to give of yourself so that other people can reach their potential. My parents are both educators, now retired, but they also have their own ministry back home just outside of Atlanta, and just kind of watching their example over the years, growing up, seeing how they have invested in others, have poured into others without, expecting anything in return or requiring anything in return. I think that's kind of where a lot of it started. And I knew from a young age that I wanted to have an impact on this world in some way. I didn't know what that was going to look like or how that was going to manifest itself. But I just knew I wanted to make an impact. And so I think, as I've gotten older and as I've kind of hit different checkpoints of graduating high school and then getting into undergrad and going to a historically Black college and university like Xavier University of Louisiana down in New Orleans, and just really being grateful and honored at the experience that I had there, and the connections that I was able to make there, and the relationships that I was able to build there and still maintain to this day. My time at Xavier was probably one of the most pivotal times in my life, because it was an opportunity for me to, because I'll be honest, like I grew up in a predominantly white school district. I grew up playing a predominantly white sport in tennis. So there were very few spaces outside of my home and our church where I was in the majority. And so coming to Xavier was a really pivotal point in my life, because I was surrounded by Black excellence. I was surrounded by people that were striving for more, that were ambitious, that were looking to do more and looking to have an impact on the world in a meaningful way. And that was really impactful for me. It was also an opportunity for me to kind of step outside of the umbrella of my parents and start to figure out like who I am and who I want to be long term, and the life that I want to live, and how I want that life to impact the lives of others. And so it was, folks like, my college tennis coach, Alan Green, who is still a really, really big impact, still has a really big impact in my life, and seeing his leadership example and how he led our team and how he really gave of himself. And he was someone that I really learned kind of how to lead from the front. So he was the kind of coach that like, he would do every single thing with us, like everything. So he was in the weight room with us at 6 a.m, lifting just as hard as we were. He did all of the running. He practiced with us. He played us. He did literally everything. And so I think between those those three people, and then there's one other person in particular who's no longer with us, Norman Wilkerson. He was my first tennis coach outside of my dad, and I just, what I learned most from him was the power of, number one, positivity, but also the power of, making people feel comfortable, and how you can influence people in a positive direction just by making them laugh, or just by giving them a word of encouragement. And so I think the combination of those four people really helped to kind of set the foundation for a lot of the work that I'm doing today. And so, to your point, I've been very, very blessed to be able to start a few different programs within the USC family, so to speak, to really decrease the barriers and the obstacles for students of color, in particular African American students or Black students, to enter the profession of physical therapy. Currently, I want to say the most recent numbers, I think Black physical therapists and physical therapy assistants make up about 3 to 5% of the entire physical therapy profession. But meanwhile, Black people in the country, in the US, make up about 13% of the population. And so, as I transitioned from Xavier, again, historically Black college and university, where I was the majority, to USC, where I was very quickly the minority, it was a transition. It wasn't that I didn't feel welcome or anything like that, but it was just a different environment. It was a different culture. It was a different climate. And so it was something that I had to get used to. But it was also, I was asking myself, well, but why though? Why aren't there more people that look like me at a place like this? Mm-hmm. Because in my mind, I'm just coming from a place where, there was excellence all around me.
Yeah,
so
Black excellence. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's not for a lack of talent. It's not for a lack of smart, so to speak. It's, I think, in a lot of respects, it's a lack of exposure. It's a lack of opportunity. And so, as a student, I just kind of observed and just kind of looked around and said, okay, there aren't very many Black people here, but there aren't very many Hispanic or Latin people here either. And so as I kind of matriculated through and got out of school, I was really thinking long and hard about how we can impact or affect change in that regard, and specifically how I could potentially put something together to start to close that gap. And it really worked out well, because Xavier, they have been number one in the US for placing African Americans in health profession schools for at least 2 decades now. And at the time, USC was the number one physical therapy program in the country as well. And so, and Xavier had been, creating partnerships. So they had created multiple pipelines with med schools and nursing schools around the country. But as I looked around kind of the physical therapy profession, I didn't see anything that really mirrored that initiative in the medical field or in the nursing field, really trying to decrease barriers or provide more opportunities for students of color, so that we have a more diverse work class or working population to meet the needs of our actual patient populations. And so I started doing work on creating a pipeline program, essentially creating an early assurance program. So Xavier students, and specifically for Xavier, because Xavier has given so much to me over the years, I knew that even as an undergrad there, like, they had this like wall of fame in our gym, and I was like, one day I want to be on that wall of fame. And I think, I don't know if I'll ever make that wall of fame, and that's not really the point. I think the point that, or the emotion that I was feeling in that moment when I spoke that to myself was like, I want to do something that really impacts this university in a meaningful way, whether or not I get recognition on a wall or a plaque for it is immaterial, but I knew I wanted to do something that was going to be impactful. And so I think this was my way of giving back to a place that has given me so much in Xavier, but also in the same token, like pushing our profession forward so that we can reach our maximum potential. And so essentially the program allows Xavier students in their sophomore year to apply directly to our PT program. And as long as those students go through that process, regardless of whether they're accepted into our early assurance program or whether they eventually get accepted into our program or another physical therapy program, the whole point of this pipeline program is, again, to decrease barriers and obstacles, because there's so many, there are lots of low income first gen students that, number one, don't know that physical therapy is a viable resource or a viable opportunity
Completely.
to live out your healthcare dreams. I think, you know, in the Black community in particular, I got a lot of this growing up as well, especially as I was becoming more and more sold on the idea of being a physical therapist. They were like, well, why don't you want to be a physician? Like, you can do a lot more. You have a lot, you can write prescriptions and you can do this and you can do that. But to your point earlier, Elle, like I'm a people person. Like I love the idea of getting to know folks. I love the idea of working one-on-one or even in a collective to achieve something greater than ourselves. And I just felt like, you know, as a physician, you know, to build relationships, yes, you can build fast friendships. But in order to maintain those friendships or maintain those relationships, you need consistency. You need to be in front of that person on a consistent basis. And for me, I didn't think that being a physician was going to be the best way for me to impact that change. And what I saw in physical therapy was that, you know, I'm seeing people, you know, two to three times a week, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And so really being able to find out what motivates a patient, to find out what makes them tick was really important to me. And so that is really why I chose physical therapy. And so being able to expose other young students of color, and in particular young Black students who know that they want to do something in healthcare, know that they want to have a big impact on the world or on someone's life, but don't really know what all is available and what are the different avenues that they can take to get there, was kind of the first problem. So it's really about exposure, number one. And so that was really one of my big goals with this partnership, was really to start by just exposing students to what physical therapy is, what are the opportunities within physical therapy. And I think what they started to see was like, oh, okay, like there are just as many specialties and subspecialties in physical therapy as there are in, you know, what it takes to be a physician or a pharmacist. And there are still ways that I can have a really, really big impact on someone's life and really impact it in a meaningful way. And then from there, it was about helping them navigate that pathway, saying, you know, like thinking about this, and maybe this is a little bit morbid, but thinking about the path to being a physical therapist or a healthcare provider, and there's a minefield in between, and having someone that can tell them to take a right here or a left there, don't step there, step here instead, can be really, really powerful. And I think it can help to effectively close the gap, right? Because I think a lot of folks, especially our first gen students or our low income students, they may not have someone in their family or in their network or in their circle that has ever navigated this path, not let alone like, and so they need guidance on that. And so really the program serves to be kind of multifaceted in that way. And so we build in mentorship, we build in summer program opportunities, clinical opportunities, to really help deepen the connection that these students are building with the profession, but also giving them an opportunity to be exposed to different patient populations so that when they do get to PT school, they have a clearer picture of what they want out of the experience so that they can maximize it and really get to their goals and their dreams faster. So that's really what the early assurance program is built to do. And so far we've gotten some really, really great results. Currently, I think on our campus right now or within our program, I want to say, so we just graduated our first Xavier's, or our first couple of Xavier students. We have another student that'll be graduating next year. And then we've got two Xavier students coming in this year. We've got a couple already on campus. So we're going to have about 6 to 8 students that are from Xavier that I've had the privilege to work with and to learn from, but also hopefully impact in a positive way. And what I have really enjoyed about this process is that, I think through some of my example, it has inspired at least some of those students to want to pay it forward and continue to do this work after they finish up and after they graduate. And so I think that's ultimately for me what I want. Like, yes, do I want all of those Xavier students to come to USC? You damn right I do. Absolutely. But I also understand that that's not going to be everybody's journey for a litany of reasons, right? And so the idea was to put something together that would hopefully impact meaningful change, right, on both campuses, but at the same time would eventually encourage other programs around the country to see our example, and using the platform of USC and the cachet that it has built over the years, especially in the physical therapy realm. Hopefully it would be kind of a template for other programs to put together similar pathways for traditionally minoritized students and communities. So that's the EAP, and then the PTMLA, or the Physical Therapy Multicultural Leadership Alliance, is really just a point of support for those students as they transition into our program. Because I think for me personally, transitioning again from an historically Black college to a predominantly white institution, even though I was in a lot of white spaces growing up, I had never been in a white space in a graduate level program. So I didn't really understand what that was going to be. But having an organization like PTMLA and some of the other affinity groups that we've put together over the last couple of years, I think really speaks to the power of community, and how putting in resources in areas of support and anticipating needs of support, especially for students that are traditionally underrepresented in certain spaces, are so important to their overall success and their ability to thrive in those environments. And so that's a little bit of some of the DEI stuff that I do. But yeah, it really started with the foundation of my parents and a couple of my coaches growing up.
Thanks again for sharing that. So a few things, like I hear like some spiritual kind of language, like history, and this is a spiritual friendly place. So go like however, you can share as much as you want, because I really believe in integrated living. And I think, so when we talk about that in the physical therapy realm, we have this biopsychosocial model. I think we need another sphere in there in terms of spirituality. And we just need to do better of just integrating everything. And even in terms of, I think, like our education. So that's a little bit more, a lot of my draw is like, okay, we need to not just be so much in the cerebral headspace in terms of like how we train our healers and our educators. But so feel free as we continue our conversation to go as much or share as much as that as you want to. It's beautiful to hear about and you paying homage to people that have really paved the way for you and really modeled for you, because I think there's a few things there that I believe so much too, in terms of, I think if we want to change the world, it has to start within us. And I think, and it's always, we say that like in parenting or things, I don't have any kids, but I still think about children and how they're brought up and things, and how you change behavior and how you help somebody become like who they really are. It's really what people do that versus what they say. Like we follow models. And so it's really beautiful that you have models of people, and even your tennis coach, right, who is there doing everything with you. And then now you're doing that same thing. You're saying like representation matters, and you're not just being like the one representative, you're like helping other people. And that's just really really beautiful. So congratulations on seeing fruit already from your efforts. So if we can go to a gardening analogy, like you were like, the people tilled the soil and like planted seeds, and then, you've maybe become your own varietal, and you're, from the, what's it like in the South, right? Where's Xavier? Is that, did you say Georgia?
In New Orleans, yeah.
New Orleans, I'm sorry. Yeah. Are you from Georgia? What, I have some sort of Georgia in my mind association with you. Okay. Yeah. From there over to like Southern California, and that you're planting seeds here and doing that in your various roles as a physical therapist, and then with your ties to the university as an educator, and using your resources, right, to pull people forward. And that's really beautiful and inspiring to me to hear about that. And just to, when I saw you from afar kind of doing those things, it's really, that encourages me. And in my educational work at USC, I've benefited. This is the most diverse class that we just finished. There's the most, there's still like work to do, but it's made for a more positive experience for me to vicariously see how much better the student experience it is to see Black students be able to have their own group, and not that they're like cloistering, but like you're saying, there is kind of like a safety, there's like a vulnerability and an energy output to be in a culture that's so different than yourself, and to be treated as an other. And so to have people that you're like, I'm not the other, I'm part of this community, and to not be having to fight for it so much, and have that drain. It's been really exciting to see just even how the students greet each other in the morning before class, and, when they're studying and stuff. So thank you on behalf of them. But just even me, like getting to witness that, I think, because, and that to what ties to what I was saying earlier, is that having less representation, having a more, the color analogy is what's coming. Sorry, I can't think of something like a monochrome kind of, but it's like a monocultural experience, because a lot of times we don't think of whiteness as a culture, right? Because it's just like, well, this is America, this is how we do it, versus like, no, there's like a culture. Just so to have that diversity, and then to have it be actually more inclusive, right? Which is a different thing. You can have, representation, like here's something visually that you can see, versus it actually being an inclusive environment. And I could see it felt more inclusive to me, just as an observer. And I'm trying to do my part. So please give me feedback. I already noticed. So thank you for your grace, because I'm going to confess. So, I didn't know that, that Xavier, or I just wasn't remembering in the moment that was a historically Black college and university. And confession, like a few years ago, I didn't know what that, I had a student come in and she said it to our group, because we would, break up. It's like 100 student class. We'd have 10 students in our group, and they would, it's just like a little icebreaker to begin the semester. And I think it was very isolating for the student, because she was also female. So we talked about like the intersection, and I think she was just a more soft-spoken student. And she's just like, I came from an HBCU, like there was just like this, and I, in that moment, didn't know what that meant. I don't think her peers there, her classmates knew. And so to see that growth in that educational environment, and to know how that's going to continue to pay forward. So thank you for your work, and thank you for your grace towards me. And that I really am interested in learning and growing. So I was kind of joking about the 2 to 3 hour things, but we're going to have a hard time getting through all our questions.
I know, it's just 1 hour.
So yeah, drop in the chat if you're like, no, seriously, we got to like cut this. Okay. Well, I think you're going to tie it in. So So what do you think it means to live your healthiest life? So boom, just an easy question, just a softball. this
Yeah.
morning?
So, I mean, I would say, um, like being able to just show up as yourself and
Mhm.
be your authentic self. I think for a large portion of my life, it hasn't really been until probably since I got into my 30s
Yeah.
that I've really come to grips with like, yo, like this is who I am. And am I an evolving being? Absolutely. Am I still striving, to be better in certain areas and fortify other areas of who I am and what I represent and kind of what I want to, share with the world and be for the world? Absolutely. But I think, growing up, I had a lot of limiting beliefs. I had a lot of feelings of not being enough or not feeling worthy. And I think some of that is, societal, but I think also some of that is sometimes unintentionally coming from people who love us the most and who want what's best for us and want to protect us as well. And so I think, being able to be your healthiest self is really giving yourself room and space to occupy space the way you want to occupy space, as long as it's not, harming other people. And so, I think, going back to what we were just talking about with, with some of the diversity efforts at USC and how you've seen kind of a shift in the culture and a shift in the environment and really in how certain student populations show up to a graduate program. I mean, I there are definitely moments where I still feel like I have to code switch, right? Like I have to,
Yeah.
turn on something else. And, I can kind of go back and forth between, oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I can tell he's from Georgia versus, oh, okay, he's from California now, right? Like, and that's a skill that you learn as a person of
Yeah.
color from a
Yeah.
very young age. Like
Mm.
and unfortunately, a lot of people that look like me have had to kind of put on different faces, so to speak, in order to occupy certain spaces or have the opportunity to occupy certain spaces. And so I think the importance of having those student affinity groups, it gives each of those students a point of, to your point, it gives them a safe space to be vulnerable, to share commonalities, and to also embolden them to actually be their authentic selves. And I think,
Yeah.
as that becomes more of the norm, as opposed to the exception, I think it will just be an understood kind of rule. When students come on campus and they see that, oh, okay, there are different versions,
Yeah.
different iterations of
Yeah.
what it means to be Black at USC. There are different
Hmm.
iterations of what it means to be of Middle Eastern descent at USC, and same for
Hmm.
Hispanic, and same for the LGBTQ community and
Hmm.
community. And so I think I think it's really important for us all to be true to who we are and to be authentic, um, wherever we are and wherever we go, and be intentional about that. So I think that's a big part of living your healthiest life.
Yeah. Woo. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to push back on that. I'm just like, you're preaching to the choir. Uh, so I'm in the next decade. And so, early side of my 40s, and yeah, like being yourself, I think, yeah, that's just like, and that's work. That's like evolving. That's like what these thoughts that are in my head that are playing, where are they coming from? Oh, that's that person that used to like say that or imply that, or that's, from like the media, or that's from, because maybe somebody had a different experience of a coach, that was uh, whatever, more derogatory or something. So yeah, being yourself. And I also notice that correlation in our students, and that's part of what drives me to really want to promote wellness within the student population, because I think it happens in marginalized people of color. I think I see it a lot actually in the so from my perspective as a female, I see it a lot in the female students. And so there's Like there's a thing that I say to students every year, and it took me a while for me to even step up into my space and say, because I'm not a course director, I'm not, right, I don't create the curriculum. I'm but it helped me to, I can say, oh, I'm a cog in the wheel, but I've grown into know like what I can flex and how I can contribute and what I can do and step into that space. And so I could drop all kinds of like PT jargon, orthopedics about, teaching them about osteokinematics, arthrokinematics, and, end feel and what the I can teach them concepts that can really help them be a good clinician and train them how to think their mind. But to me, and I've only done this in the last few years, this is having taught since 2011. So I don't know, do the math, I guess 11 years. Woo, look at me.
Quick math. You didn't even need
11 years. Woo, that was
yeah. You didn't even have to use your fingers. You're killing it.
I know. Yeah, that's right. That's the doctoral degree gets me there. But it's only been the last few years where I felt like, can I take the microphone, because it's 100 students, can I take the microphone just for a few minutes? And I thought about why I teach, and what came out was like a blessing for the students. And really the message is all about be yourself, because I think it's a problem just in healthcare in general, whether it's for physicians or physician's assistants or PT, like there is kind of this, you need to fit the mold. Like there was, for me, I didn't have a model. So again, to models, I didn't have a model of somebody that was really integrated and brought their whole self into their work. There's this professionalism. And to me, professionalism, how it was portrayed, was not treating treating somebody with respect and things, but there was like this more extreme of divorcing part of you, and that you have to like leave that at home or aside. And I think that breeds like dishealth in me as a human, and then as my role as a physical therapist, which is my main, traditionally that's been my main work as a healer. But I think even more, I think I'm called to like help bring healing. So I love that. So thank you for bringing that. I don't know if there's anything more you want to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you summed it up well. Like, I think I mean, I think especially early in my PT career, and even during the course of PT school, to your point, like, this notion that like you have to set really, really firm and hard boundaries. And in some situations that's very true, right? Like, but I think
it's a rough education.
Yeah,
the fire hose.
But I think in most situations, you being the most authentic version of yourself and bringing that vulnerability and having the courage to bring that vulnerability to a clinical setting, I think it, to me, or at least in my experience, I think it's helped my patients kind of drop their shoulders and relax and open up, and in turn be vulnerable with me. And so it's allowed me as a healthcare provider to really get to a place where I have a much better understanding of number one, what the patient really, really wants. But number two, how they view the system as a whole, and they kind of give you a template on how they want to be treated. And most patients that I come across, more than anything, they just want validation.
Yeah.
They just want someone to acknowledge that they are having a hard time. They just want someone to acknowledge that there are barriers outside of their control that may be contributing to it. Now, once we acknowledge it, then we have to address it. And that's where the work on their part comes in. And that's also where us being in tune with those things, where we can help and really serving as a resource. So I see myself really as a mediator. So I am, I think I said earlier, I see myself as somewhat the gatekeeper, because I'm seeing this patient more than any other healthcare provider on their team. And so inherently, as we're building this relationship over the course of a year, and I have patients that I've been seeing for 10 years, right? Or since I was a student.
Wow.
And it's just because of the patient population that I work with, the chronicity of their conditions. And so, but as you build that relationship and that rapport, they will share things with you that they wouldn't think to share with their physician, because in some situations their physician may be holding a more traditional mindset as it pertains to how we relate to patients and how we deliver care to patients. And so it's massively important that our patients have at least one provider that is trying to see the world the way they see the world, that's trying to have a deeper understanding of what the challenges are and how we can start to affect change with those challenges in a meaningful way. So yes, I'm all about that.
Woo, bringing even more fire. Like what I'm hearing there is like the power of connection. That's what I'm hearing you saying and like reiterating, and how transformative that is in physical healing. But I know there's so much, we know that there's so much that's happening, and that's part of what drew me to physical therapy is physical therapy, or a physical issue has emotional, has mental, has social ramifications. So thanks for that. Our next question, Terry, I can't wait to hear what you have to say, is especially as you talk about concepts about authenticity, vulnerability, courage. What are you currently learning about living your healthiest life?
I would say the biggest thing that I've learned, especially over these last couple of years, as like our world has just gone completely haywire in lots of different ways. And I think this is really where like plants have really kind of, plants and obviously, my wife and my dog and just our little family unit have really saved me in a lot of situations. It's just, I think, just being intentional about carving out time for those that you love the most, but also being intentional about carving out time for yourself. So I think, especially for folks like us, Elle, that give a lot of ourselves, and really all healthcare providers, right? Whether you have the bedside manner of a house type medical provider, or whether you are, this super
benevolent. Oh yeah, the TV show. Sorry.
Yeah, the TV show.
I was like home health care. I was like, oh, he was like, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So if from all ends of the spectrum, as a healthcare provider, at your baseline, you are giving of yourself with every interaction. And so, I think one of the things for me when I was young, I had, tennis as an outlet, which was really great because it was a great form of exercise. And it was a way for me to kind of quiet my mind and step outside of what was happening in my day to day, and just kind of focus on hitting this ball and moving around and just feeling and just being present in that feeling. But as I've kind of transitioned away from playing tennis on a regular basis, I was, finding myself not really having other things that really stimulated me in a way that I felt contributed to my own self-care, contributed to my ability to kind of recharge and repair myself, so that I feel that I can continue to push forward and keep putting one foot in front of the other. And so I think, for me, what I've learned is really being able to carve out time and space, and really like actively looking for like passions, like what am I passionate about? Right. Like, obviously professionally, like we've talked kind of ad nauseum about what I'm passionate about professionally, but personally, what are you passionate about? Like, and for me, it's plants. It's, being a good husband to my wife. It's being a good dog dad to my dog. And so those are things, but I think also recognizing those things are important, but then putting it into action, right? Like really being intentional about carving out space for yourself and for those things that really matter the most to you. And what I will say, with especially with our healthcare system being the way it is currently, and with a lot of people leaving, kind of leaving the healthcare space and wanting to take a break and feeling burnt out, I will say, like, my family and my plants have gotten me through this time. And again, it just really gives me an opportunity to kind of step outside of the day to day, step outside of the hustle and bustle of what my life is at USC and some in other aspects. And it allows me to kind of just check in with myself. Like, when I'm checking in with my plants, do they have pests? Are their roots growing and developing? What do the leaves feel like? And it's an opportunity for me to ask me those same questions. Do you feel like you're growing the way you should? Are there any things that are holding you back that are potentially, you know, diminishing your ability to be as impactful as you can? And are those things external? Are they internal? Like what are those things that are really impacting you in a way that's potentially preventing you from having the impact that you want to have? So I think, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned over these last couple of years, is to take some time for yourself, take some space for yourself, and really ask yourself some tough questions about where am I now? Is this where I want to be? Where do I want to be? What does that journey look like? And then go for it, and be intentional about carving out that space and that time.
Mm. There again, there's just lots of truth bombs coming out. And I do want to hear a little bit more about the gardening. I am pandemic taught me a little bit about it. I've gone through waves, of trying to grow tomatoes. Like, I currently have I planted some carrots from seed in just like a 5-gallon bucket. Okay. Cause I don't have like a yard that I can till up. So it's all pot based. And it's just however many pots I have at the time, and like whatever. So, and I did really well with my first ever tomatoes like 10 years ago. And then every time since then, it's just been a bust. And I'll like buy like seedlings, and I'll buy them like organic because I'm going to eat it. And then I just like water those babies like all the time, in like 3 months. And then I'll just get like, and there's so many things about like having a good outcome, right? Like the watering, the lighting, the pests. Is there some kind of like fungi, or is there an actually like insect? Or just yesterday I had to shoo away a mockingbird. I don't know what it was going after my tomatoes. So but I think it was maybe eating the flower. I don't, maybe, do you know if they like the fruit itself, or do they like the, it looked like it was going after the blossom.
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. Yeah.
Yeah.
The birds and the squirrels, man.
Yeah, I know, right? So I'm like, I need to do like some netting around it, or
yeah.
So I planted carrots, and one little shrivelly, it wasn't shrivelly, it was just very diminutive carrot came out. It was very sad, but at least I didn't feel as bad because I did it from seed, and so I didn't spend all this money. But what started growing alongside of it, which I did not plant, is tomatoes. So so now I have tomatoes, and it's in a pot. So I'm like, I had grown tomatoes in it before, but they were seedlings. So I don't really understand, but there's like some kind of beautiful, like you've talked about, like the metaphor here of like, like of self-care, of things, of looking at the plants. Like there's like this metaphor of, and I think in the gardening kind of community, that's called like a volunteer, right? Where but there's multiple of them, and they're like, they want to live. I go out there every day, and I don't know what they are because I didn't plant them. They appear to be like some sort of cherry tomato, like smaller, but it's like, this thing is just like flowering like nobody's business. And so I tried for years. I was trying to grow carrots, and now I'm getting all these tomatoes, in this 5-gallon like Home Depot bucket. So let me ask a question, because I just talked a little bit, connecting it to me.
No, I love it.
So I've, and this is a bit what prompted me to reach out to you, is because we've kind of become connected on Instagram, and I've really loved, just since that connection, I've seen like a lot of growth and evolution of your passion in gardening. And, you're putting out videos, and I think even the moniker Black Thumb has kind of come out recently, because you were was it the Orchid Whisperer before? Which I mean, come on, guys, this guy is like creative. These are both. It's like he went from one good name to like another, and I love just like with the black thumb and like how all the nuance in that, like that's just amazing. But I'd love to hear some of, because I think it ties into like what so you said carve out time, carve out, and what I'm witnessing from across the internet vibes, I don't know how to say that, what I'm witnessing from afar, as I see you on Instagram, is I see this similar sort of thing. You're taking your passion and you're like, I'm going to put it out there to like help somebody else. So it's helped me in this journey. So I'd love to hear a little bit more how that relates to carving out the time and what's drawing you into that and your attention, whatever you want to share about your Black Thumb project and where you're going. Like, congrats on a recent LA Times write-up. I haven't read it yet. I don't subscribe, so I'm gonna have to like figure out how to get that, because I'm sure I saw the photos and stuff looked amazing. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I guess I'll start with why I call myself the Black Thumb. I feel like that is something that I haven't been able to really talk a lot about, and I'm sure people wonder like why that. And yes, it is a double entendre, right? Like,
Right.
and I love the idea of that. So, and again, like growing up and even early in my plant journey, I saw myself as a Black thumb in the traditional sense. But I actually do have two Black thumbs, right? And so, and I think, just the color Black in general, especially in our society and really globally, there's so many negative connotations with it, from darkness to death, or less than, or unworthy. And so I really wanted to take something and kind of flip it and change the perspective, where Black thumb can actually mean growth. It can actually represent something that's really beautiful. It can represent something that brings joy and light to the world. It doesn't always have to be a negative connotation associated with the word Black or the color Black. And so that's really kind of how the Black thumb kind of evolved. And obviously, from a gardening standpoint, it just kind of made sense. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with my gardening is as I got deeper and deeper into it, it really mirrored life in a way that I wasn't expecting. So you think about, you mentioned environment, right? So like most plants need sunlight, water, humidity. They need to be in the right temperature, right? Or the right temperature ranges in order to thrive. And I think, you can think about your network or your circle that way, right? Like you want people that are going to bring light to your life, right? That are going to provide you with with positivity, but are also going to help shed light on some of your blind spots, right? Like there are times where you're going to need to be held accountable for certain things, or there are times where it's hard to see the picture when you're in the picture, and so it takes someone outside of the picture that love and trust, that they have your best interest at heart, to help shed light on on areas where you might need to grow a little bit more. And then, you want someone that's going to invest in you as well, right? Like you need people in your circle that are going to water you, that are going to consistently invest in you as a person, but also the things that you are passionate about and want to bring or create for the world. And so, and then from like a humidity standpoint, right? I think of humidity as like it's not tangible, but when it's there, it's obvious that it's contributing to the overall growth and development of a plant. And so from like a relationship standpoint, right, I see humidity the same way we kind of think about people's energy or people's vibe. And sometimes it's not necessarily tangible. You can't necessarily put your finger on it, but whenever you're around this person or this group of people, you feel elevated, you feel like you are in an environment where you can continue to thrive. And so you're getting kind of these almost like micronutrients from their energy to continue to keep going and to keep pushing. And then just, from a temperature standpoint, just being in the right environment, just finding the right range, where you can be the most effective and most impactful, and never being too high, never being too low, but trying to find that center and that equilibrium and that balance within your life. So I think for me, like, plants has been such a huge teacher for me of how to be present, how to tinker with the environment, right? And in the same way that I tinker with the environment with my orchids, like, okay, if it's not responding the way I want it to respond at this moment in this place where it is, either in my house or in our backyard, then I've got to do a little bit of work and some trial and error. I've got to figure out a better way of doing things so that it does start to respond in a positive way. And I think, for me, they're just so many life lessons. I mean, from patience to persistence to perseverance, consistency. Those are all things that I've learned through plant care, and I'd like to think that they have helped me in other aspects of my life as well. Definitely with, building, the brand that is the Black Thumb, or that is becoming the Black Thumb. I would not have been able to do it, obviously, without the plants, but also without what those plants have taught me about myself, but also about the process of success, and so that's been really, really great. And as far as, like, what I have on the horizon, I really enjoy, educating others. I really enjoy sharing my experiences, and, with the hope that it may help someone else avoid a pitfall, or avoid some of the trials that I had early on in my plant journey. And so I really see myself as someone who can provide education for those that are looking for it. I also definitely love this idea of interacting with people, and learning about people and meeting people. And so in the future, I definitely want to, continue to do more like workshops, webinars, virtually, in person, consultations, all of those things. But also be a point of education for folks who are looking to keep their orchids blooming, or who are looking to really take a deeper dive in their plant care. So I think I'm uniquely positioned as one of very few people of color I'll say specifically one of very few Black people in the orchid space that are kind of out there and starting to gain some notoriety. And so I think I have a really, really unique opportunity, and I'm in a unique position to carve out a space for myself, but also a space for people that look like me in the plant space, that have a passion for a particular plant, or plants in general. So I'm just really excited about what the future holds. I just got my website up and running.
Okay, I'm gonna have to peek over. Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah,
cool.
So the website is blackthumbmarket.com.
Cool.
I currently have a free digital download out right now, which is just it's called Synopsis Phalaenopsis. Which is just some foundational tips and care tips for Phalaenopsis orchids in particular. So,
okay. Fancy word I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So Phalaenopsis is just the species of orchid. That's what it
cool.
is. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Don't let me
I love
fool
the
you.
I love the poetic. I love the poetry there.
Yeah, I'm not huge on scientific names myself. Like, people would be like, "Oh, so what about, the I'm like, you're speaking a completely different language. Send me a picture, please. I don't know what you're talking about." But that's just me personally. But anyway, but yeah, so I mean, so that's up and running, and yeah, it's a free digital download, and so I'll be working on some other digital downloads in the future, and and really just trying to grow from there. And so it's been a really, really incredible journey. I've been really blessed to have the amount of support, primarily from, like, my wife, and the rest of my family. she's always great about me like recording and all of these things. And so she makes a pretty big sacrifice in that regard. So I always appreciate her willingness and her support of this passion. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely excited about the future and what other opportunities may come of me being featured in the LA Times, and some of the other opportunities, me being on your podcast, which is a part of like being featured in the LA Times. So yeah, so I mean, it's been a whirlwind these last few weeks, but in like the utmost most positive way. Like there's just been such an outpouring of support from followers, new and old, and it's been really really great to see that people take such an interest in what I share and what I bring to the gardening space and the plant space, and looking forward to continuing to deepen that bond with everyone.
I love it. Well, I look forward to, your new New York Times bestseller when that comes out, your TED Talk. I'll just be, I'm totally blanking on, one of those like learning channels. I can't think of what that's called right now. Anyway, tutorials on the fancy, maybe it'll be a Netflix special or something, or
I'm here
or maybe
for it. Maybe
you'll take it a certain way and it'll be on HBO, like you'll be doing it in the nude or something like that. No, I can't wait to just see where that goes. As we kind of wrap it up here, what is something, so you've already dropped so much, I've already got like a ton of notes here so by the way, I will put your website up, Instagram handle. Let me know anything else that you think would be helpful to share, and I'll put it in the podcast notes, and we'll have it up there. So you've already shared like so much. I've just really been enjoying this conversation, and I know other people are as well. What is something that you wish that people knew more about living their healthiest life? So from your perspective, and I think maybe you're going to reiterate something that you've already said, because there's already so much that I hear that I could guess and people can know. But is there anything that you would like? What should people do? What is something you wish people knew about living their healthiest life from your life experience? What do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I wish more people would come to the realization earlier, myself included, that like you are enough just as you are. I think especially in the fast-paced, like social media driven world that we live in, there are a lot of external pressures to look a certain way, dress a certain way, act a certain way, talk a certain way. And if you get more likes, that means you are up here as opposed to down here, right? And I think what we need are more people who are courageous enough to just, again, be themselves. Because the more variations, I mean, like, here's the thing, like, it's crazy, like whoever or whatever you think invented or created you, whatever that power is, like if they are the true all-knowing, all-loving power, do you like, and this is a question that I had to ask myself, do we really believe that they would create us to all be exactly the same, or to all want to do exactly the same thing? Like we all have a superpower or two or three or 10. Yeah. And I think along the way, a lot of, for whatever reasons, whether it's for money or power or just general oppression, people have been convinced that they don't have a superpower, that they, in and of themselves, just existing on this earth together, that they don't have worth, they don't have value. And I think that's the furthest thing from the truth. So I think the more we can encourage people to show up and be seen, to take that from Brene Brown, and not just be seen, but to really be authentically yourself in the way that you dress and the way that you talk. And I think, one of the things that was really helpful for me in that journey was actually moving to California. Even though I was from, Atlanta or just outside of Atlanta, I didn't have very many experiences in the city of Atlanta where I could see a diverse group of people, where I could be around folks who dressed a little differently than I did. And coming from a relatively kind of, I would say, relatively like socially conservative background where, like I was expected to tuck my shirt in and do all of these things because, again, it was a safety issue for my parents that I be a young Black man in the South. And so there were certain things that I just weren't allowed to do. Like I wasn't allowed to wear my hat backwards when I was growing up because, especially not driving, I couldn't wear a hat at all when I was driving because the societal norms of our time. And so so once I moved out here to California and got to kind of step outside of that Southern bubble, so to speak, it was really eye-opening to see just how kind of more free people appeared and seemed. It felt like people were a bit more comfortable in their own skin, that they were a bit more comfortable in how they showed, or how they were facing to the world, how they showed themselves and presented themselves to the world. And that was really kind of an aha moment for me to be like, you know what, Terry, like you are who you are right now. And yes, you're striving to continue to get better and to grow and evolve in other areas of your life. But like, if you want to wear this, wear it. If you want to talk like this, do it. If you want to pursue that, go for it. And so I think, the more we have folks that number one, understand their worth, understand that just by them being here, that they are worthy and that they are valuable and that they bring something to the world that no one else brings. I think we could really, really start to make a big impact on some of the things that have been plaguing our world for a really long time. And hopefully we can get to a place where we acknowledge people, we validate people, and we accept them for who they are, and we allow them to live their lives the way they see fit, and give them the same opportunity to life, liberty, and happiness as some of the other communities that help build that structure.
Just a moment of silence for that. It's well, if I pause too much, I think I'm gonna get some. I feel moisture coming in my yeah. I'll just like let that sink in. It was really beautiful. It's like going to church right there. Man, yeah, so we've been colleagues, no pressure, you don't need to respond to this, but I hope we can be friends. God, there's just so much there. Humans having superpowers. Yeah. Yeah, I feel a kindredness to you. Sorry, I'm like, it's too far gone. I'm just going to be ended in tears here. There's no coming back in my current state. I'm in a tender season in life right now. So, but just, yeah, those messages of enoughness, humans having superpowers, shout out to Brene Brown. I've been a Brene Brown evangelist for a while. And now I don't think she needs them anymore. Like I think right. She's on Netflix, she's on HBO. So she's like, I can just pull back and I can be like, yeah, okay. We don't, which is funny actually, because I grew up kind of evangelical Christian, and it's a little bit more like, yeah, you don't really need to fight for things if they're true. They'll just kind of see and come on board, that kind of like debating. And so Brene Brown probably doesn't need an evangelist anymore, because as like when truth gets out, right, and if like beauty unfolds from that, it comes out. Thank you so much for sharing about just a little peek into what it looks like to live in the world, in the US, like as a Black individual, as a Black male. Now, and like steps that was part of your, upbringing that your parents had to teach you for safety. There's so much you can unpack in that in terms of like literal physical safety, in terms of racism, in terms of implicit bias, in terms of like systemic racism, like in terms of policing. And you're just so gracious of like how you're approaching it. Just thank you for sharing about that and how it relates to just even your life as an adult, and regional difference, cultural differences and things. You've talked about your folks of your parents being like these incredible models of excellence, but then there's some things that you had to like learn to, you're so gracious about how you said it, right? Like, but learning to, oh wait, like this thing that maybe kept me safe then, it's also maybe creating a border and a boundary that's repressing some of who I am and what I have to give the world. And you cover so much ground. I'm trying to remember all the things I want to say. You guys got to follow him on Instagram. He has a really great sense of style. Like, I love it. I love like those vibrant colors that you wear in the I like the organic Negro shirt. I think you have another one that's really cool. Yeah, there we go. The grow. See, it's just like that's so cool. I didn't even know you had it on since it was below the screen, because you have a t-shirt with that too, right? You're like,
I have so many of their every time they drop something, I'm like, ooh, let me get on the website.
Cool. Because because that's part of like, even like authenticity, right? Is supporting people that are doing good work, that you are like, yeah, you're making the world a better place. You're changing, you're breaking down barriers. You're helping people. And so, you've got some nice stees. I like it, so it's pleasant, like to watch. And that's even, and I relate to that journey too, growing up in the Midwest, like a more conservative background, and a little bit more like, not again racial, but more from a female perspective of things in terms of like sexuality and like how you're supposed to present yourself. And just an unfolding freedom of exploration of like, wait, what do I want to wear? Instead of like a much more pragmatic or prudish kind of maybe way that I was brought up, but kind of exploring that, and how something as simple, I got little air quotes up here, simple as clothing, like how like important and transformative that can be in terms of how people treat you in a negative way, but then also just how that can participate in the unfolding of who you are and the discovery of who you are. And so keep going with that. I can't wait to see like how you turn up the dial and how you explore that. And I relate to that, not in the same experience of you, but I relate to that. Man, Terry, thank you so much for being here. This has been, even if nobody else listens, it's been an incredible joy to me, and blessing to all the listeners. May you see the blessing.
Thank you, Elle. Thank you so much. Like, this has been an absolutely incredible conversation. I just appreciate what you're doing with this podcast. I think it's so important for your listeners, but also for the larger, global community. I definitely feel a kinship to you as well. So you are not alone in that feeling. I just so appreciate your authenticity, and just thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks so much. May you see the blessing, everyone. Thanks for listening to this episode of the LYHL Podcast. If you liked what you heard, you can find me on Instagram at the LYHL, as well as YouTube, the internet, www.theelbytrail.com. And that's about it. And back here for our next episode of the podcast. Subscribe and leave a nice review if you think it'll be helpful for other people. Only then. Thanks. May you see the blessing.